Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived was already what? In the transgression. So it was a result of the fall of the woman that made the man to eat. So the woman was already in a fallen state. She was already deceived. She has eaten because the nature has been transferred. But that is not enough. The man needed to also permit that nature to be solidified in the human race. So it was until he ate that their eyes were open. It was until he ate that the nature was transferred. So here we are saying that this man was not deceived. He did what he did as a result of foreknowledge. The question is, why did he do what he did? Now, verse 12, I suffer not the woman to teach nor usurp authority over the man, but to be now this the man is not every man. Are we together? This scripture is not saying that women should not teach men. No, the man is talking about her husband, and he's saying that the woman should not usurp authority over her husband. The wife should not lord it over her husband. Why? For Adam was first formed, then Eve, and Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived was in the transgression. That was why Adam did what he did. And when God was saying that the woman should not usurp authority over her husband, there is a reason why he was saying that. Because there is a sacrifice that the man did because of his wife that made him. You will see that Adam was a man after the image of God. The scripture says Adam was made what? In the image of God, and in the likeness of God was Adam made. So Adam was not just oh God, you have the mind of Christ, right? What does that help you to do? To peep into the mind of Christ. You can understand what God is doing. You can understand what God is thinking, right? You can know the will of God, isn't it? Because you have the mind of Christ. This man Adam is not just having the mind alone. He was also having the image of God in him. It was a reflection of God. It was a man that understood the will of God. It was a man that understood the mind of God. So he was not a man that could just be deluded or deceived. He was a man that knew what he was doing. He knew God. The scripture says that he was in the image of God. I'm looking at Adam before the fall, so that we understand the work of Christ, that he could not have been by another means. He must have gone, he surely will have to go through that travail, because the man that opened the door for sin to come in is not just an ordinary man. It was a man that carries the image of God. So it will take another man that carried the image of God to reverse what he did. The work that Adam did, chapter 5 verse 14. I want us to see quickly that scripture talks about Adam, that Adam was also a type of Christ. Adam was a figure of Christ. Is it there on the scriptures? Romans chapter 5 verse 14. I want us to see it in the scripture by ourselves. Please. It was a picture of the Messiah to come. Here we are seeing that it was a figure. Please stay on 14, sir. It was a figure of him that was to come. That is, Adam was a type of Christ. It was a picture of Christ. We saw that Adam was the image of God. So that if Adam is actually the type of Christ, you will see the reflection also of what Christ did in Adam. That Christ knew that his bride, we were already in sin. Are we together? He was not deceived, but he came and he associated himself with us. Adam was a man walking in revelation knowledge. He came and he said that for this cause, a man will leave his father and his mother and be what? And be cleaved unto his wife. Even though the wife, the scripture says that she was already deceived and she was in sin. But the man who understood the mind of God knew that a man must live to cleave. And you will see Ephesians telling us that this is a great mystery. That Adam was not deceived, but Christ also was not deceived. He knew what he was doing when he came and associated himself with us in our sin. So Eve was already in the transgression, and Adam gave himself up for her. That is why you see the scripture saying that, see, respect this man because he sacrificed himself for you. You will realize that when God was cursing and was punishing sin in Genesis, God never cursed Adam. Never. God never cursed Adam. God caused the ground for his sake. Genesis chapter 3, verse 17. Because you listened to the voice of your wife. Now, it was not the voice of persuasiveness. It was not the voice of his wife trying to cajole him to eat. No. It was the voice of the wife in pit. The voice of the wife who has been deceived, who is now in transgression, crying for help. Because you're hearkening unto that voice and in disobedience to my own voice. The only difference between Christ and the first Adam was because one gave his life according to the authority of the Father. He said, I give my life. He said, no one takes my life from me. He said, I gave it and I have the power to take it back again. He was doing it under the obligation and the instruction of the Father. But Adam did it out of his own obligation, and it was because he knew something about the Father. That according to Christ, he said, you will not leave my soul in Sheol, in hell. Adam also knew that God will not leave him to perish. See, the man Adam is a man that walks in revelation. That word, there are a lot of things about Adam that you will see in the scriptures, but they are not very open until you begin to see them. You will see Enoch. The scripture talk about Enoch, that he walked with God, right? And he called him the seventh man to Adam. He walked with God, and Enoch was prophesying what was in Revelation. He said God will come with 10,000 of his angels to judge and different kind of things. That was Enoch, who was already in a fallen state. He could peep into the heart of God because he just walked with God and he knew what God will do. But this is Adam, who was not in a fallen state, who was the image of God. In fact, in Luke chapter 3, verse 38, the scripture called him the Son of God. Adam was the Son of God, the image of God. Another person that was called the image of God was Jesus in Hebrew. Say that he was the express image of God. So this was Adam, also the image of God, who knew what the Father will do, or who knew what the Father has done, because the lamb was already slain even before the foundation of the world, and he acted according to the will of the Father. That is why God never left man. You will wonder when the scripture says, what is man that you are mindful of him? The same thing that angels sinned. They left their estate, and the scripture said that they were abandoned forever. They were kept in chains of darkness. Man did something similar, and God never forsook him. Why? This was a man that was acting as a type of Christ. I'll be wrapping up in about 5 minutes here, but I'm trying to open eyes to see the kind of man that opened the door to sin to come in. And when we see this man, we'll be able to understand that when God says that there's no other way, it must be another Adam that must come to revert the work that the first Adam has done, and he must go through the same process before he could retrieve it. You will understand what he was saying. I want to look at it very, very quickly. That Adam, what happened to him when he opened the door for sin to come in was that the nature of sin came into him. The same thing was what happened to Jesus. The agony that Jesus Christ went through was not just the agony of dying a physical death. Second Corinthians chapter 5 verse 21. But I will read Isaiah. Let someone go to that. Isaiah chapter 53 verse 6 and 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 21. And all we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord, this is Jehovah, has laid on him the iniquity of us all. What does that mean? 2 Corinthians, are we there? For he has made him sin for us, who knew no sin. Adam also knew no sin, but he became sin for the purpose of his bride. The same way Christ, who knew no sin, must become sin for the purpose of his bride, such that the last Adam can revert the work of the first Adam. Who knew no sin, he made sin that we might become the righteousness of God in it. We will look at the second part later. But the first part is saying that God made him sin for us. This is not just that God put sin upon his head. God made him sin, and we knew where sin originated from. In other words, this Christ must partake of the nature of the devil. Tomorrow we are going to look at some of these things very keenly. That Jesus actually died the death. He actually partook of the nature of the devil, and he was actually alienated from God. That's why you see him crying, my God, why have you forsaken me? Because there's a time that he has to be separated from God. And not just only separation alone, there are other things that happen to him. And until he satisfied the claim of justice, he was not raised from the dead. And you will realize that if you read your scriptures very carefully, there was no way that the scripture says that Jesus Christ rose from the dead. No, he was raised from the dead. That's very significant. That it took him to go through all that he needed to go through before the Father was satisfied. And the scripture says in Isaiah, said it pleased the Father to what? To bruise him. It pleased him to crush him. It pleased him. It was satisfied to wound him. Why?